Captain Tahoe Kim crouched behind a fallen tree. Rain poured down his face as he watched the enemy camp through his night vision goggles. This was supposed to be a simple mission. Get in, gather intel, get out. No one was supposed to know he was here. His radio crackled. Eagle 1, report status. Eagle 1 in position. Target in sight. Proceeding as planned, Tahoe whispered. He checked his watch. 3 minutes until the guard change. That would be his chance to move closer. Tahoe had been in Special Operations Command for 8 years. He was one of Earth's best soldiers. Smart, fast, strong. But most of all, he knew how to adapt. Suddenly, a strange blue light surrounded him. Tahoe tried to move, but his body wouldn't respond. What the? He started to say, but the words died in his throat. The blue light grew brighter. The rain, the trees, the enemy camp, everything disappeared. Tahoe felt like he was being pulled apart and put back together. His stomach churned. His head spun. Then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. Tahoe fell to his knees on a hard metal floor. This wasn't the forest anymore. The air smelled clean, almost too clean. The light was bright, but didn't hurt his eyes. The human is here, a high-pitched voice said. Tahoe looked up. Standing in front of him were 2 tall, thin beings. Their skin was pale blue. They had large eyes that seemed to change color like opals. They wore simple white clothes that seemed to glow slightly. Tahoe jumped to his feet and reached for his gun. It wasn't there. Do not be afraid, Captain Tahoe Kim of Earth, one of the beings said. Its mouth didn't move, but Tahoe heard the words clearly in his mind. We mean you no harm. Who are you? Where am I? Tahoe demanded, taking a defensive stance. I am Gyol, ambassador of the Ulani people, the taller being said. You are aboard our ship, orbiting what you call Jupiter. Tahoe tried to stay calm. This had to be a trick, or a dream, or maybe he'd been hit on the head during the mission. Why am I here? He asked. Gyol stepped forward. We need your help, Captain. You were chosen because of your skills and your human qualities. Human qualities, Tahoe repeated. The second alien moved closer. Your species is known across the galaxy for being unpredictable, adaptable, and surprisingly effective in combat despite your limited technology. Our princess, Sora, has been taken by the Drakari Empire, Gyol explained. They are a warlike people who want to control all worlds in this sector of the galaxy. Tahoe shook his head. And you want me to, what, rescue her? One human against an alien empire. Yes, Gyol said simply. The Drakari fear humans. Your species' reputation precedes you. Your ability to fight when outmatched, to think in ways our logical minds cannot predict, makes you the perfect champion for this task. We can return you to Earth, to the exact moment we took you. When the mission is complete, the second alien added. No one will know you were gone. Tahoe didn't believe this was happening, but the metal floor beneath his boots felt real. The strange smell in the air felt real. The alien standing before him certainly looked real. If I refuse, he asked. Then we return you now, and seek help elsewhere, Gyol said. But the princess may die, and the Drakari will continue their expansion. They will reach Earth within 50 of your years. Tahoe took a deep breath. If this was real, saying no meant putting Earth at risk. If it wasn't real, well, he had nothing to lose by playing along. Show me what I'm up against, he said finally. Then I'll decide. Gyol's opal eyes shimmered with what might have been relief. Follow me, champion of Earth, the alien said. We have much to discuss. Tahoe followed Gyol through a long, curved hallway. The walls glowed with a soft light that seemed to come from nowhere. They passed other Ulani who stopped and stared at Tahoe with wide opal eyes. They have never seen a human before, Gyol explained. They entered a large round room. The ceiling was clear, showing the stars and the giant red spot of Jupiter. In the center of the room was a table with a glowing map of what Tahoe guessed was this part of the galaxy. A female Yuleni stood at the table. She was shorter than Gable, with darker blue skin and eyes that flashed with green and gold colors. "This is Minji, our tactical expert," Gael said. "She will brief you on the situation." Minji looked at Tahoe with clear doubt in her eyes. "This is the champion. I expected something more." Tahoe crossed his arms. "Sorry to disappoint." "Minji, please show Captain Kim what we face," Jael said softly. Minji touched the map. It zoomed in to show different star systems. One group of stars turned red. "This is Drakari space," she said. Her voice was in Tahoe's head, like Gael's, but sharper. "They have conquered 12 worlds in the past 5 cycles. They are not interested in peace or trade. They take what they want." The map changed again to show a rocky planet. "This is Kumdo, a mining planet. Our intelligence says Princess Sora is being held in the main Drakari fortress there." "Why did they take your princess?" Tahoe asked. Minji and Gael exchanged looks. "The Yulani are peaceful, but our technology is advanced," Gael said. "The Drakari want our ship designs and our power sources. Princess Sora was on a diplomatic mission when they captured her. They will use her to force us to give them what they want," Minji added. "Then they will kill her anyway." Tahoe studied the map. "How many guards at this fortress?" "At least 200, Minji said. "All armed with energy weapons that can cut through metal. All trained from birth to fight." "And you want me to go against them alone?" Tahoe asked. "Not alone," Minji said, though she didn't sound happy about it. "I will go with you, but you will lead the mission." Tahoe reached for the map. To his surprise, it responded to his touch. He zoomed in on the fortress. "Your human fingers work on our systems," Minji said, sounding genuinely surprised. "Interesting. Why me?" Tahoe asked again. "Why a human?" Gael stepped forward. "The Drakari are logical. Their tactics are always the same. They are strong, but they are predictable. Humans are not," Minji finished. "Your species fights in ways that make no sense to the rest of the galaxy. You take risks that seem foolish. You try tactics that should fail. And sometimes, you win when you should lose. The Drakari have never fought a human," Gael added. "They know of your species only through stories. They fear what they do not understand." Tahoe looked back at the map. He had been in impossible situations before. This was just another mission. A very strange mission, but still a mission. "I'll need weapons," he said finally. "And I need to learn about Drakari weaknesses." Minji's eyes flashed with surprise. "You will help us." "I'll try," Tahoe said, "but I have conditions. First, I want your word that you'll return me to Earth when this is done. Second, I want to learn about your technology. And third, I want the truth. All of it." "The truth?" Gael asked. "I don't think you're telling me everything about why the princess was taken," Tahoe said. "I need to know what I'm really walking into." Minji and Gael looked at each other again. "Very well," Gael said at last. "You will have the truth. But first, let us show you the weapons you will use. The Drakari will not wait while we talk." "This is a light pulse weapon," Minji said, handing Tahoe a silver device that looked like a small gun. "Point and think about firing. It reads your brain signals." Tahoe took the weapon. It was lighter than it looked but felt solid in his hand. He aimed at a target on the wall and thought about shooting. A blue beam shot out and hit the center of the target. "Good," Minji said, sounding surprised. "Most non-Yulani need days to master that." "I've always been a quick learner," Tahoe said with a small smile. They were in the ship's training room. For 3 hours, Minji had shown Tahoe different alien weapons and tools. He had surprised her by mastering most of them quickly. "Now try this," she said, lifting a large, heavy-looking staff. "This is a gravity disruptor. It's too heavy for most Yulani to use in battle." Tahoe took the staff. It was heavy, but thanks to Earth's stronger gravity, he was stronger than the Yulani. He spun it in his hands, testing its balance. "How does it work?" he asked. "Hit the floor with it," Minji instructed. Tahoe struck the floor. A wave of force spread out, knocking over practice dummies set up around the room. "Impressive," Tahoe said. "I'll take this one." For the first time, Minji almost smiled. "You are, not what I expected, human." "Call me Tahoe," he said. "And what did you expect?" "Stories say humans are aggressive, emotional, and difficult to work with," she said. "But you are focused and learn quickly." "Don't worry," Tahoe said. "I can be plenty aggressive when I need to be." Gyol entered the training room. "It is time. Our ship is approaching Kendo. We must discuss the plan." They returned to the map room. The image now showed a detailed view of the Drakari fortress. "The fortress has 3 layers of security," Minji explained. "Outer wall guards, inner compound patrols, and the prison section, where Princess Sora is held. Guards change every 6 hours, Gyol added. "The next change is in 2 hours. That would be your best chance to enter unnoticed." Tahoe studied the map, thinking, what about these tunnels under the fortress? Mining tunnels. Minji zoomed in on the tunnels. Yes, but they are partially collapsed and filled with toxic gas. No Yulani or Drakari could survive in there. Tahoe smiled. "But maybe a human can. Our bodies are built to handle different environments. How toxic is this gas?" Minji described the gas. Tahoe did some quick mental calculations. "I can handle short exposure," he said. 15 minutes max before it becomes dangerous." Minji looked shocked. "You would risk such exposure?" "It's our best option," Tahoe said. "The Drakari won't expect anyone to come through those tunnels. Even if you survive the gas, the tunnels are narrow and unstable," Minji argued. "Then I'll be careful," Tahoe said. "And you'll wait here, safe on the ship." Minji's eyes flashed. "I will not. I am going with you." "The tunnels are too dangerous for your biology," Tahoe said firmly. "There is another way," Gyol interrupted. "We have protective suits. With one, Minji could follow you through the tunnels." Tahoe nodded. "Fine. But I lead, and when I give an order, you follow it immediately. No questions. Got it?" Minji looked like she wanted to argue but nodded stiffly. 2 hours later, Tahoe and Minji were on the surface of Kendo. The planet was dark, with 3 small moons giving just enough light to see. The air was thin and smelled of metal and dust. The Drakari fortress loomed ahead, a massive structure of black metal and stone. Guards with glowing weapons patrolled the walls. "The tunnel entrance is this way," Minji whispered, pointing to a rocky outcrop. Tahoe checked his weapons one last time. The pulse gun was holstered at his side. The gravity staff was strapped to his back. He also had several small devices, Minji called distraction spheres, that could create light and sound to confuse enemies. "Remember the plan," Tahoe said quietly. "We get in, find the princess, and get out. No heroics." "I should say the same to you, human," Minji replied, but there was less hostility in her voice now. Together, they moved toward the tunnel entrance and the beginning of their real mission. The mining tunnel was narrow and dark. Tahoe went first, using a small light Minji had given him. The walls were rough rock with veins of blue metal running through them. The air grew thicker with toxic gas as they moved deeper. "How much farther?" Tahoe asked, his voice muffled by the cloth he had wrapped around his mouth and nose. Minji checked a small device on her wrist. Her protective suit covered her entire body except for her face, which was protected by a clear shield. 300 meters to the fortress foundation," she replied. "Are you sure you're not affected by the gas?" Tahoe's eyes watered and his throat burned, but he could still breathe. "I'm fine. Keep moving." They reached a place where the tunnel split in 2 directions. "The left path leads to the prison level," Minji said. but my scanner shows movement ahead. Tahoe unhooked the gravity staff from his back. Stay behind me. They moved carefully down the left tunnel. The gas was thinner here, but the air felt heavier. Soon they could see a faint light ahead. Tahoe motioned for Minji to stop and crept forward alone. The tunnel opened into a small cavern. 2 Drikari guards stood near an equipment rack. They were taller than humans, with thick gray skin that looked like armor. Their eyes were small and dark, set deep in their faces. They carried long rifles that glowed with red energy. Tahoe had 2 choices: try to sneak past or take them out. Sneaking would be safer, but if the guards found them later, the alarm would trap them inside. He made his decision quickly. Stepping back to Minji, he whispered, 2 guards. I'm going to take them out. When I move, stay here until I call you. Before she could argue, Tahoe slipped into the cavern. He moved silently, staying in the shadows. The Drikari were talking to each other in deep, rumbling voices. They didn't notice him until he was almost upon them. The first guard turned just as Tahoe swung the gravity staff. The wave of force knocked both guards against the wall. But they weren't down. Drikari were tough. The second guard raised his rifle. Tahoe dove to the side as a bolt of red energy blasted the rock where he had been standing. He rolled to his feet and drew the pulse gun, firing 2 quick shots. The first hit a guard in the chest, making him stumble. The second missed. The guards were shouting now. One spoke into a small device, calling for help. Tahoe rushed forward, surprising the Drikari with his speed. Humans were faster than they looked. He slammed the butt of the pulse gun into one guard's face, then spun to kick the other in the knee. There was a crack as the joint bent backward. The first guard grabbed Tahoe by the throat with a massive hand. Tahoe couldn't breathe. He pointed the pulse gun at the guard's arm and fired. The guard roared in pain and let go. Tahoe finished both guards with quick shots to their heads. The cavern went quiet except for his heavy breathing. Minji, it's clear, he called. She hurried into the cavern, eyes wide at the scene. You took down 2 Drikari elite guards by yourself. Tahoe checked the guards' weapons. They weren't expecting a fight. Next time won't be so easy. He picked up one of the Drikari rifles. Can you use this? Minji nodded, taking the weapon. You fight differently than I expected. How so? The Yulani fight with distance and precision. The Drikari fight with strength and power. She looked at the fallen guards. You used speed, surprise, and adapted as you fought. You weren't following any pattern. Tahoe shrugged. That's how humans fight. We use whatever works. Suddenly, Minji's scanner beeped. More Drikari coming. They must have heard the fight. Tahoe counted 6 dots moving toward them on Minji's scanner. We need to move. Which way to the prison level? Through that door. Minji pointed to a metal door on the far side of the cavern. But Tahoe, there are 6 of them. Tahoe checked his weapons and smiled grimly. Then they're outnumbered. Hide behind those crates, Tahoe told Minji, pointing to a stack of metal boxes. When they come in, I'll distract them. You take the ones on the left. Minji nodded and moved into position. Tahoe took 2 distraction spheres from his pocket. He could hear heavy footsteps approaching. The door on the other side of the cavern slid open. 6 Drikari soldiers entered, weapons ready. They saw their fallen comrades and growled angry words to each other. Tahoe threw the first sphere high into the air. It burst with a blinding flash and a sound like thunder. While the Drikari were confused, he threw the second sphere to the right side of the room. When it burst, Tahoe was already moving left. He fired 3 quick shots from his pulse gun. 2 Drikari fell. The others turned toward him, but Minji was ready. She fired the Drikari rifle, taking down 1 more. The remaining 3 spread out, trying to surround them. Tahoe rolled behind a rock as energy bolts hit all around him. He saw Minji pinned down by fire from 2 soldiers. Tahoe grabbed the gravity staff and leaped out. He brought the staff down hard on the ground. The wave of force knocked all three Drakari off their feet. Before they could recover, Tahoe and Minji finished them with careful shots. "We need to move quickly," Tahoe said, breathing hard. "More will come soon." They rushed through the door the soldiers had used. Beyond was a long corridor with dim red lights. The walls were smooth metal here, not rough rock. They were inside the fortress. "The prison cells are one level up," Minji whispered, checking her scanner. "There's a lift ahead." They moved cautiously down the corridor. Twice they had to hide as Drakari patrols passed. Finally, they reached the lift. "This will take us directly to the prison level," Minji said, "but there will be guards at the top." Tahoe nodded. "I have an idea." When the lift door opened at the prison level, two Drakari guards looked in to see what appeared to be one of their own soldiers. It was Tahoe wearing armor from one of the dead guards. The armor was too big, but in the dim light, it was hard to tell. The guards hesitated just long enough. Tahoe fired his pulse gun twice, and both dropped silently. Minji emerged from behind him. "That worked better than I expected," she admitted. The prison level was a round room with cells along the walls. Each cell had a solid metal door with a small window. A control panel stood in the center of the room. "Which cell is she in?" Tahoe asked. Minji hurried to the control panel. "I can find out." Her fingers moved quickly over the strange symbols. "Cell 7. But Tahoe, there's a problem. The system shows 8 guards are due to check this level in 5 minutes. Tahoe went to cell 7 and looked through the window. Inside was a female Yuleni with light purple skin. She sat perfectly still on a small bench, eyes closed. "Is that her?" Tahoe asked. Minji joined him and looked. "Yes, that's Princess Sora." She touched the control panel again, and the cell door slid open. Princess Sora's eyes snapped open. They were deep violet and showed no fear, only alert intelligence. "Who are you?" she asked, looking at Tahoe with curiosity. "I'm Tahoe Kim, from Earth. We're here to rescue you, Your Highness." Sora stood up gracefully. "A human. Interesting choice, Minji." "It wasn't my choice," Minji said. "Ambassador Gil selected him." "We can talk later," Tahoe cut in. "We have less than 4 minutes before guards arrive." "Then we should hurry," Sora said calmly. She moved to a hidden panel in her cell wall and pressed it. A small compartment opened, revealing a data device. She took it and slipped it into her sleeve. "What's that?" Tahoe asked. "Information I was collecting when I was captured," Sora said. "It's why I was here." Tahoe frowned. "You weren't on a diplomatic mission." "I was," Sora said, "but I had other objectives as well." Minji looked uncomfortable. "Princess, perhaps we should explain later." "No more secrets," Tahoe said firmly. "What's going on?" Before Sora could answer, an alarm began to blare throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridor. "They've discovered the missing guards," Minji said urgently. "We need to go now." Tahoe looked hard at Sora. "This isn't over. You're going to tell me everything once we're safe." Princess Sora nodded. "I promise, Champion of Earth. But first, we must survive." "Back to the lift," Tahoe ordered, checking the pulse gun's power level. It was still half full. "Good." The three of them rushed to the lift, but red lights on its panel showed it was locked down. "They shut down all lifts," Minji said. "Standard Drakari procedure during alarms." Tahoe looked around quickly. "Is there another way down?" Princess Sora pointed to a small door across the room. "Emergency stairs, but they will be guarded." "No choice," Tahoe said. He moved to the door and listened. He could hear heavy footsteps coming up. Many footsteps. He turned to Minji and Sora. "Too many coming this way. We need another option." Minji checked her scanner. "There's a maintenance shaft 2 levels down. It connects to the lower tunnels, but we'd have to get past all those guards first." Tahoe thought for a moment. Then he saw air vents near the ceiling. They were small, but maybe big enough. Those vents, he said. Where do they lead? Sora looked up. Air cleaning system. They run between all levels. Are they big enough for us to crawl through? For you and me, yes, Sora said. Minji might be too tall. Minji measured the vent with her eyes. I can make it work. Tahoe used the gravity staff to knock down the vent cover. He pulled himself up first, then helped Sora and Minji into the narrow tunnel. The vent was tight, especially for Minji. They crawled in single file, Tahoe leading the way. Below them, they could hear Drakari soldiers filling the prison level, shouting orders. Left at the next junction, Sora whispered from behind Tahoe. That will take us down 2 levels. They turned left and found a shaft leading down. One by one, they carefully lowered themselves. The shaft was full of dust and hot air. Tahoe's eyes stung and his lungs burned. When they reached the bottom, Tahoe kicked out another vent cover. They dropped into an empty hallway. The maintenance shaft should be close, Minji said, checking her scanner. Suddenly, a voice boomed through the fortress speakers. Attention all units. Fugitives on LEVL3. Princess Sora Hayes ESKAPD Wait 22 Execution Policies. 1 is believed to be a human. The voice paused, then continued in a tone of disbelief. A human. Secure all edicts. Commander Dosu wants the human alive. Tahoe raised an eyebrow. Sounds like I'm famous. Drakari have never faced humans before, Sora explained as they hurried down the hall. They only know the stories. They find your species disturbing. Good, Tahoe said. We can use their fear. They found the maintenance shaft, a round tube with ladder rungs built into the side. Below was darkness. This goes all the way to the bottom level, Minji said. From there, we can reach the tunnels we came in through. They started climbing down. The shaft seemed to go on forever. Tahoe's arms were getting tired, but he kept going. Behind him, he could hear Minji and Sora breathing hard. When they finally reached the bottom, they found a new problem. The door to the tunnels was sealed by a thick metal barrier. Security lockdown, Minji said, trying the control panel. I can't override it. Tahoe examined the door. Can we cut through it? Not with what we have, Minji said. We need. She was interrupted by a hissing sound. Green gas began pouring into the room from vents in the ceiling. Sleep gas, Sora cried. Minji's eyes widened in fear. It's deadly to Yulani in high doses. The gas was filling the room quickly. Sora and Minji started coughing. Tahoe could feel his head getting light, but his human physiology was more resistant. Hold your breath, he told them. He looked around desperately for an escape. There was only one option. Tahoe grabbed both Minji and Sora around their waists. What are you doing? Minji gasped. Saving your lives, Tahoe said. With all his strength, he lifted both aliens and ran toward another door. This one wasn't sealed. It led to a tunnel filled with the same toxic gas they had passed through earlier. For the Yulani, it was deadly. For the Drakari too. But for Tahoe, it was the only chance they had. Hold on, and don't breathe, he ordered, carrying them into the toxic tunnel. Tahoe ran through the toxic tunnel, carrying both aliens. His lungs burned and his muscles screamed, but he kept moving. Minji and Sora held their breath, eyes closed tightly against the stinging gas. After what felt like forever, Tahoe saw light ahead. It was the tunnel exit. With his last bit of strength, he burst out into the open air of Kimdo. He gently set Minji and Sora down on the rocky ground. Both aliens gasped for air, their blue and purple skin pale from the ordeal. You carried us, both, Minji said between breaths. That should be impossible. Humans are stronger than we look, Tahoe said, though he was breathing hard too. Earth's gravity is higher than most planets. Makes us tough. Sora looked at him with new respect. You saved our lives. Tahoe Kim of Earth. There was no time to rest. In the distance, alarms still blared from the fortress. They'll send ships to search for us, Minji warned. We need to contact the Yulani vessel. She reached for a small device on her belt, but it was damaged, probably during their escape. My communicator is broken, she said with alarm. Tahoe looked around. They were in a small valley with rocky hills on all sides. About half a kilometer away, he spotted something promising. Look there, he pointed. Is that a landing pad? Minji squinted. Yes, for small scout ships. The Drakari used them to patrol the mining areas. Can you fly one? Tahoe asked. Yes, both Sora and Minji answered at once. Then we're stealing the ship, Tahoe said, standing up. Let's move before they find us. They moved quickly across the rocky terrain, keeping low. The landing pad had 3 small ships. Each was about the size of a bus, with sleek black hulls and red markings. 2 Drakari guards patrolled the area. Tahoe motioned for Minji and Sora to stay hidden while he circled around behind the guards. With 2 quick shots from his pulse gun, both guards were down. Clear, he called. They ran to the nearest ship. Sora placed her hand on a panel by the door, and to Tahoe's surprise, it opened. Drakari security is good, but not perfect, she explained with a small smile. Their systems share basic architecture with ours. Inside, Minji took the pilot's seat. Her fingers flew over the controls, and the ship hummed to life. Strap in, she warned. This will not be smooth. The ship lifted off just as alarms began blaring across the landing pad. Minji pushed the controls forward, and they shot up into the sky. The acceleration pressed Tahoe back into his seat. They broke through the clouds into the darkness of space. For a moment, Tahoe thought they were clear. Then Minji's face fell as she looked at the scanner. 6 Drakari fighters launching from the fortress, she reported. And there's a larger ship in orbit. Commander Dosu's personal battlecruiser. Tahoe looked at the scanner. The Drakari ships were faster and would catch them before they could reach the Yulani vessel. Can we outrun them? He asked. No, Minji said. But there's an asteroid field ahead. We might lose them there. She changed course, heading straight for a dense field of floating rocks. The Drakari fighters followed, firing red energy beams that narrowly missed their ship. As they entered the asteroid field, Minji had to slow down to navigate the dangerous rocks. The Drakari stayed in tight formation, still gaining on them. They're too organized, Tahoe said, watching the pursuit ships. Break their formation. Minji looked confused. How? Tahoe took the controls. Let me. To Minji's horror, Tahoe spun the ship into a tight spiral, then cut the engines briefly. They dropped below the Drakari formation. Before the enemy could react, Tahoe fired the engines again, shooting between 2 large asteroids. Are you trying to kill us? Minji shouted. No, Tahoe said calmly. I'm flying like a human. His unpredictable maneuvers confused the Drakari pilots. 2 ships crashed into asteroids trying to follow them. Another got separated from the group. Princess Sora moved to the weapons console. I can help, she said, taking control of the ship's guns. She fired with surprising accuracy, hitting one of the remaining fighters. It spun out of control and crashed into another Drakari ship. Both exploded in silent flashes of light. Tahoe looked at her with newfound appreciation. Not just a diplomat, are you? Sora's violet eyes glinted. Royal Yulani are trained in many things. Champion of Earth. The last Drakari fighter was still on their tail. Tahoe made the small ship dive and turned between asteroids, but they couldn't shake the pursuer. We're hit, Minji shouted as the ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed on the control panel. Engine damage, Sora reported, checking the screen. We're losing power. Tahoe looked at the scanner. The nearest planet was a small green-blue world called Hasum according to the ship's database. "Can we make it to that planet?" he asked. Minji checked the readings. "Maybe. But communications are down. We can't call the Yulani ship for help." "One problem at a time," Tahoe said. "Get us to Hazem." The ship limped toward the planet, trailing smoke and debris. The Drakari fighter stopped firing but continued to follow at a distance. "Why aren't they attacking?" Tahoe wondered. "They want to see where we land," Sora said. "Then they'll call for reinforcements." The ship entered Hazem's atmosphere. Flames licked at the hull as they descended through clouds. Minji fought with the controls as the ship shook harder. "Brace for impact," she shouted. They crashed into a thick forest. Trees snapped under the ship as it skidded to a stop in a small clearing. Inside, the three were thrown against their safety restraints. Tahoe's head hit something hard, and he tasted blood. "Everyone okay?" he asked, touching a cut on his forehead. Minji and Sora both nodded, though they looked shaken. "We need to get away from the ship," Tahoe said. "The Drakari will be coming." They gathered what supplies they could and exited through the emergency hatch. Outside, the air was thick and humid. Tall purple-green trees surrounded them. Strange bird-like creatures called from the branches. "Which way?" Minji asked. Tahoe pointed to a hill in the distance. "High ground. We can see what's coming." They moved quickly through the forest. The gravity on Hazem was slightly lighter than Earth's, making it easier for Tahoe to move. After an hour of walking, they reached the top of the hill. Looking back, they could see their crashed ship. A Drakari fighter was landing nearby. "We need to keep moving," Tahoe said. As they turned to continue, they found themselves surrounded. Small, thin figures with skin that looked like tree bark stood around them, holding stone-tipped spears. Their large green eyes watched the strangers cautiously. "Don't move," Sora whispered. "These must be the native Hazemites." The database said they were primitive but peaceful. One of the Hazemites stepped forward. It made clicking sounds and touched its chest. "Madu," it said clearly. Tahoe slowly touched his own chest. "Tahoe," he replied. Madu's eyes widened. It made more clicking sounds to the others. "I think it's trying to communicate," Minji said. Tahoe nodded. He pointed to the crashed ship, then made a flying motion with his hand. Next, he pointed in the direction of the Drakari and made a threatening gesture. Madu seemed to understand. It nodded and motioned for them to follow. The Hazemites led them down the other side of the hill to a hidden cave entrance. Inside the cave was a small village. Homes were carved into the walls, lit by glowing blue plants. More Hazemites gathered to look at the visitors. Madu brought them to a larger cave with paintings on the walls. It pointed to one painting that showed tall gray figures like the Drakari standing over smaller Hazemites. Another painting showed the Drakari digging into the ground and taking shining stones. "The Drakari are mining here," Sora said, "probably using the Hazemites as forced labor." Tahoe felt anger growing inside him. "So they're not just after you. They're building an empire by enslaving others." Sora touched the data device from her prison cell. "This is what I was investigating. The Drakari are expanding faster than we realized. They're taking worlds and resources no one knew about." "Why didn't you tell me this from the start?" Tahoe asked. "We weren't sure," Minji said. "Princess Sora volunteered to be captured so she could gather proof." Madu interrupted by pointing to another wall painting. This one showed a bright light in a mountain. Strange symbols surrounded the image. Sora gasped. "It can't be." She quickly pulled out her data device and compared the symbols to those on the painting. "What is it?" Tahoe asked. "The ancient weapon," Sora whispered. "The one that ended the last galactic war. It's here, on Hazem. This is what the Drakari are really looking for." The last Drakari fighter was still on their tail. Tahoe made the small ship dive and turn between asteroids, but they couldn't shake the pursuer. "We're hit," Minji shouted as the ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed on the control panel. "Engine damage," Sora reported. checking a screen. "We're losing power." Tahoe looked at the scanner. The nearest planet was a small green-blue world called Hasem according to the ship's database. "Can we make it to that planet?" he asked. Minji checked the readings. "Maybe. But communications are down. We can't call the Yulani ship for help." "One problem at a time," Tahoe said. "Get us to Hasem." The ship limped toward the planet, trailing smoke and debris. The Drikari fighters stopped firing but continued to follow at a distance. "Why aren't they attacking?" Tahoe wondered. "They want to see where we land," Sora said. "Then they'll call for reinforcements." The ship entered Hasem's atmosphere. Flames licked at the hull as they descended through clouds. Minji fought with the controls as the ship shook harder. "Brace for impact," she shouted. They crashed into a thick forest. Trees snapped under the ship as it skidded to a stop in a small clearing. Inside, the three were thrown against their safety restraints. Tahoe's head hit something hard, and he tasted blood. "Everyone okay?" he asked, touching a cut on his forehead. Minji and Sora both nodded, though they looked shaken. "We need to get away from the ship," Tahoe said. "The Drikari will be coming." They gathered what supplies they could and exited through the emergency hatch. Outside, the air was thick and humid. Tall purple-green trees surrounded them. Strange bird-like creatures called from the branches. "Which way?" Minji asked. Tahoe pointed to a hill in the distance. "High ground. We can see what's coming." They moved quickly through the forest. The gravity on Hasem was slightly lighter than Earth's, making it easier for Tahoe to move. After an hour of walking, they reached the top of the hill. Looking back, they could see their crashed ship. A Drikari fighter was landing nearby. "We need to keep moving," Tahoe said. As they turned to continue, they found themselves surrounded. Small, thin figures with skin that looked like tree bark stood around them, holding stone-tipped spears. Their large green eyes watched the strangers cautiously. "Don't move," Sora whispered. "These must be the native Hasemites." The database said they were primitive but peaceful. One of the Hasemites stepped forward. It made clicking sounds and touched its chest. "Madu," it said clearly. Tahoe slowly touched his own chest. "Tahoe," he replied. Madu's eyes widened. It made more clicking sounds to the others. "I think it's trying to communicate," Minji said. Tahoe nodded. He pointed to the crashed ship, then made a flying motion with his hand. Next, he pointed in the direction of the Drikari and made a threatening gesture. Madu seemed to understand. It nodded and motioned for them to follow. The Hasemites led them down the other side of the hill to a hidden cave entrance. Inside the cave was a small village. Homes were carved into the walls, lit by glowing blue plants. More Hasemites gathered to look at the visitors. Madu brought them to a larger cave with paintings on the walls. It pointed to one painting that showed tall gray figures like the Drikari standing over smaller Hasemites. Another painting showed the Drikari digging into the ground and taking shining stones. "The Drikari are mining here," Sora said, "probably using the Hasemites as forced labor." Tahoe felt anger growing inside him. "So they're not just after you. They're building an empire by enslaving others." Sora touched the data device from her prison cell. "This is what I was investigating. The Drikari are expanding faster than we realized. They're taking worlds and resources no one knew about." "Why didn't you tell me this from the start?" Tahoe asked. "We weren't sure," Minji said. "Princess Sora volunteered to be captured so she could gather proof." Madu interrupted by pointing to another wall painting. This one showed a bright light in a mountain. Strange symbols surrounded the image. Sora gasped. "It can't be." She quickly pulled out her data device and compared the symbols to those on the painting. "What is it?" Tahoe asked. "The ancient weapon," Sora whispered. "The one that ended the last galactic war. It's here, on Hasem. This is what the Drikari are really looking for."